So the next topic that we are going to talk about is social classes in India. Now, till this point of time, you have an idea about caste. You have an idea about tribes. Who are the tribes? You also have an idea about religions. Just now we saw that. The next interesting feature of any society is class. And what we will do is we'll try to understand how classes are formed in Indian context. So what are we going to do? See, you might have definitely used this term, right? Most likely these terms, upper class, middle class, lower class, you would have come across these terms. And sometimes you might have also mentioned, or you might have referred to yourself as being part of this class. I'm from upper middle class, I'm from middle class, I'm from upper class, or that person is from upper classes. So you would have used this term. But I would want you to think about it. What is the meaning of this? Where does upper middle class start? Where does a middle class start? Where does upper class start? Have you ever given a thought to it? Right? So, what are those exact boundaries? Or do exact boundaries exist? Maybe they don't exist. And in fact, what is the meaning of the term class? Right? How do you define a class, any class? So, what we are going to do next is we'll look at some of these aspects. It's some of the most interesting aspects, most important aspects. So first thing what we'll do is, we'll look at the agrarian class structure. That means in rural areas, mostly people are engaged in agricultural activities. And in fact, one of the way by which you define rural area is the areas where majority of the population is engaged in agriculture. So in rural areas, which is again that agrarian India, what are the different kind of classes? How are people divided into these classes? What are the ways by which these classes have formed? Right, so this is what we will do first. Right, how does the agrarian class structure look like? The second thing that we will do is, we will try to look at a particular kind of class which is generally in the news, the middle classes. See, upper class, it is kind of easy to understand who are the upper class. People who are wealthy, people who own the means of production, people who are the industrialists, people who own different kinds of enterprises. They are the upper class. The lower class are those people who generally will be putting in their own labor. But then in between you have the middle classes. Who are these middle classes? What is the unique feature of Indian middle class? And most importantly, how large is the Indian middle class? Usually, if you read different business papers, right, newspapers or business articles, they will all talk about how we have a huge middle class, and this huge middle class is going to increase in time. The size will increase, their incomes will increase. So all these businesses are targeting our middle class. Right, targeting in the sense, in a good sense, right? This middle class is basically the target group. The middle class is going to purchase different kinds of goods and services from the businesses, as a result of which economic activity will be better, businesses will be thriving, will flourish. So many times you'll come across this thing. And not only when it comes to the economy, right? Usually in a positive sense also we talk about it. Right? We should have a large middle class, society gets stabilized because of that. Middle class plays a very significant role. Middle class helps in modernization of society. All these things you come across. But what do you mean by middle class? Where does that start from? Right? Which point middle class starts and which point middle class ends? Who all are middle class in India? Do we have a large middle class or a small middle class? All these things we will attempt to answer, or at least you will have an answer by the end of the session. So let's get started. First thing first, what is class? What do you mean by the term class? See, class refers to a group of people, a societal group, where people have, in that same group, right? People have similar kind of skills, they have similar kind of incomes, they have similar kind of wealth. Their material well-being is similar. It's not necessarily exact, but again, within a particular acceptable range. So that is a class. Let's say, upper class. What do you generally mean by that? People who are all wealthy. Lower class, people who are not as wealthy. middle class somewhere in between. Right? So a group has been formed by people who are having similar kind of wealth, similar kind of income, maybe similar kind of skills, similar kind of material well-being. There is one rough meaning of class. Then there are some technical definitions also. There are multiple technical definitions. I don't want to go into that. But one of the most commonly accepted technical definition is, it is a group of people having identical position in the market situation. This is given by Weber, Max Weber. So those who are going to study sociology, those who are going to study public administration, in fact anthropology also, they're going to refer to Weber at various points of time. Right? So what Weber is saying is, it includes all those people who have similar position in the market situation. Or in other words, it includes those people who have similar ability to draw rewards from the market. In the market, different people draw different kind of rewards. Some people will have some incomes, some people will have some profits, some people will make money by getting some rent, right? So whoever is making similar amount of incomes or similar amount of wealth, right, they all are part of the same class as per Weber. Again, it's more of a wealth, income, material well-being kind of criteria. What is important is to distinguish class from things like caste. Sometimes people confuse between these two things, caste and class. Right? So I just want to give you some understanding of these two terms, or how to differentiate this. See, in class, what happens? Right? Let's say you are part of one class. Let's say you are part of the lower classes. You're not wealthy, your parents are not wealthy. But if you are hardworking, if you are talented, and if the society is open, then because of your hard work, because of your talent, your class position will change. You are getting educated, you're working hard, you're getting a good job. Over a point of time, your class position will change. Maybe you will move to middle class, maybe you will move to upper classes also. And there are so many examples of that happening. In case of India, you have people who have been born in lower classes, lower middle class, not lower class, but lower middle class for sure. People like Dhoni. But because of their hard work, because of their talent, over a period of time, what is happening? Right? That person is going and providing leadership to the Indian cricket team. And again, there is massive improvement in Dhoni's and his family's position in the class hierarchy. They're moving into the upper classes. And this is just one example. There are so many other examples. People who are maybe the founders of different startups. Maybe they were in the middle classes, but because their startup worked well, they are in the upper classes now. Right? So there is mobility here. Social mobility is something which is promoted if a society is class-based. But what about caste? Can you change your caste? You can change your class for sure. But can you change your caste? No. Highly unlikely. Some limited avenues might be there, but they're all very restricted. Sanskritization and all those things, again, we find very few instances of that happening. Also, caste is something which is based on hereditary criteria. People are born into a particular caste and they can't change it. Ascriptive. Class, you're born in a particular class, but you can change your class position. In fact, during your lifetime, your class position might change multiple times. So caste is something which prevents social mobility. Class-based society, they give importance to social mobility. They promote social mobility. So this is the difference between caste and class, right? It is very important to distinguish between these two things, right? And also keep in mind that don't use these terms interchangeably. Sometimes there can be overlap, by the way. Those who are in the lower caste, they might also be in the lower socioeconomic classes. That can also happen. People who are in the upper castes, they might also be in upper classes. So in that case, there is overlap, but it is not always true. Maybe there are people who are born in a lower caste, so they continue to remain in the lower caste, but their class position would have changed over a period of time. Right? They might have moved into upper classes. right? They might be wealthy, they might have good source of income. So that divergence can happen. So now let's try to understand what kind of agrarian social structure, agrarian class structure India has. But before that, what we will do is we'll try to understand what kind of agrarian class structure India had, right? Before the Britishers, during the British rule, after independence, what happened, and now what kind of agrarian class structure exists, right? How can you divide the people who are uh, in the agrarian society? How can you divide, or how can you classify them? Not divide, how can you classify them, right? How can you put them in different kinds of social groups in terms of wealth, income, or some sort of skills? So that is what we will do next. So let's look at the agrarian social structure, right? I'm not using the term class structure here. There's a reason why I'm not using the term class structure, right? So before the Britishers came to India, how did the agrarian society look like? Now, did you have these kind of classes back then? See, Indian society was primarily a caste society, right? People were divided into different kinds of social groups, and these social groups were based on the caste. So before the Britishers came, you did not have these class kind of formations which are only on the basis of income, wealth, material well-being. What kind of formations were there? It was mostly caste-based formations. And there was one system that was kind of prevalent, which is called as the Jajmani system. Those who were involved in agriculture, or those who were part of this agrarian society, among them there was a relation, and this was governed by what was called as Jajmani system. What is the meaning of this? Jajmani system implies a system of exchange between the Jajmans and the Kamins. Now, what are these terms? Some of you might be hearing this. So certain kind of castes were considered to be the Jajmans. Right? These were the castes which owned land, which cultivated land. Right? Ownership they had over land. While there were other castes which provided services. They were the Kamin castes. So the Jajmans, the patron caste, and the menial castes were the Kamins caste. And there was a system of exchange between them. So the Jajmans, they will have some agricultural production. A part of it they will give to the Kamins in exchange for the services that Kamin caste will be providing. Kamin caste can be the one, like for example, the washerman caste or the ironsmith caste. They will be the Kamin caste. So caste decided occupation, and if you're one of those castes which is considered to be a Kamin caste, you will be providing those services to the Jajmans. And the same thing applies for the Jajmans as well, right? Occupation and caste, they're linked with one another. So this was the kind of equation. The Jajmans were the ones who cultivated and owned lands. Kamins were the ones who provided different kinds of services. So the agrarian economy looked like this. It was bifurcated on the basis of this, the Jajmani system. Now the question is, was this equation on an equal footing? We are saying there is reciprocal exchange, right? Which implies that there is some relation over there. But was that relation equal? No. It was not on the basis of equality. It's not that the Jajman and the Kamin were at the same level. Rather, those who were owning the land, those who were cultivating the land, they had a upper hand, right? So those who were the upper caste, they owned land, they were more powerful. So indirectly what we are trying to say here is the caste inequality that existed, it was reinforced by the Jajman system. Now you might have a question that why this agrarian economy was on the basis of caste? Why class formation did not happen? See, one of the most important factor for formation of class is ownership rights, property rights. But the kind of economy that we had back then, property rights had not developed. Concept of ownership rights was not there. Market economy also had not developed. So class-based stratification was not that common at that point of time. So this is how the agrarian economy looked like, and this is how the agrarian social structure looked like. Caste-based formations were there, exchange were taking place on the basis of caste. But after this, the Britishers are coming, And now things started changing. How? So Britishers introduced bunch of things, right? So they changed the agrarian relations, right? They initiated some of these things which changed the agrarian relations. Now, what did they do? In different parts of the country, they introduced things like zamindari system, rotwari system. Overnight, they're creating intermediaries. Who were the zamindars? The zamindars were not cultivating on the land. The zamindars, they had ownership over land, but they were not cultivating. Someone else was cultivating. The zamindars were given the task to collect revenue and pass it on to the Britishers. Right? That is what they were trying to do. And they did not have much interest in the land. If someone is cultivating in that land and was not able to give the revenue that was expected out of that individual, they can be thrown out of it. So land is now becoming a commodity. Property rights, they were introduced now. Right? Land is becoming a commodity. Now there's a land market developing now. Emergence of that is happening. Also, Britishers are trying to incentivize, or they're trying to force people in different places to go for cash crops. And many times people are not getting the right kind of returns from this. So from sustenance farming, now you're moving towards commercialization. So all these things leads to a situation where the farmers are very, very vulnerable. They are not having enough agricultural production. There is change in the cropping pattern. And all these things leads to a situation where there is a massive amount of indebtedness and landlessness in the agrarian economy. And if you look at the class structure, that is now emerging. So in the agrarian economy, there are multiple classes now. But one way to look at it is, now the state, the British state, the colonial state, it is becoming one of those supra landlords. And then you have all these appointed landlords now. The zamindars are the appointed landlords. They have been given the ownership rights over property, and they are expected to collect revenue, and they are expected to give that revenue to that supra landlord, that is the state. And this is what happens. Appointed landlords, right? These people were not cultivating on the land. They are just appointed by the British state. So now, in the agrarian economy, you have different classes formed. One is these appointed landlords. Another is you have sub-landlords. And then you have people who are actually cultivating on the land. So here also there are certain interesting things that are happening. Many of these landlords, they belong to upper sections of the society. These landlords, they did not have much interest in agriculture. So many times what will happen is they will not even be in the rural areas. They will be staying in some urban areas, where again mostly cultivation is not happening. So they used to be absent. They were the absentee landlords. So now who is going to see what kind of cultivation is happening or not? Who's going to monitor that? So what they will do is they will put in place some sub-landlords. And then there are some people who are actually cultivating the land. The farmers, the peasants, the sharecroppers. So let's say the farmers, sharecroppers are here. So they are the ones who are cultivating the land. In between, you might have multiple number of sub-landlords. So one sub-landlord is now sub-renting the land. Then another sub-landlord is there who is again further sub-landing it. And then you will have some of these absentee landlords here. And then you have the state here, the supra-landlord. So what is happening? These guys, the farmers, peasants, sharecroppers, right? They are the ones cultivating the land. They might be generating some 100 units of revenue maybe. And the British, the colonial state at that point of time, it is expecting that it will also get some amount of revenue. So this revenue moves from here to here. And everyone in this entire chain, in this entire hierarchy, will take some amount of commission in between. Right? They will be taking they will be collecting some revenue in between. So all of these people in between, they're not contributing here to the cultivation, to the production, nothing. But they are all taking a part of the revenue. right? So these people at the bottom, they are the ones who are actually productive. Others are not at all productive, but they are collecting revenue from all of them. And more the number of these sub landlords, right? So more amount of lack of productivity in the entire economy. This is what is happening. And more pressure on these folks, by the way, because as per permanent settlement system, the Britishers, they have settled it permanently that this much amount of revenue I should get from this much amount of land. So if there are more people in between, all of them will take their cut, which implies that people at the bottom will get even less, because the final revenue that should reach to the top is fixed. It is permanently settled. So this kind of structure is developing now, class structure. Absentee landlords, sub-landlords, and you have the farmers, sharecroppers, peasants at the bottom. So this was the situation before independence, during the Britishers' time. Now after independence, things are gradually changing. But that does not mean the class structure ceased to exist. No, class structure exists, but class structure is gradually changing. The role of caste might have changed. What is happening in the last 60, 70 years? Multiple things. Technology in agriculture is being used. Modernization is there. With the help of technology, what happens? Efficiency increases. Something that you were able to do only with the help of 10 people, 100 people, 200 people. Now you can do it with the help of machines. So in the agrarian economy, different castes were involved. People from different castes were involved. They were providing different kind of services. That's how the Jajmani system looked like. But with the advent of machines, with the use of technology, with mechanization, modernization, all these services can be provided by machines maybe. Right? So different castes providing for the services are not required. So the role of caste in this economy reduces. Apart from that, there is commercialization, money, finance, commerce. In the past, what used to happen was the Jajmans, they will be cultivating the land and they will provide a part of whatever they have cultivated to the Kamins. Kamins, what they are doing, they are providing services. So this exchange, all these exchanges happening in kind. It is not happening in terms of cash. But as the economy is getting commercialized, finance, that is becoming more important. This in-kind transfer, it does not have as much significance now. Right? So the relation that existed between all these castes, the interdependence, that is also getting impacted. Apart from that, now you have better transportation facilities, you have better communication facilities. Also, all the different places in India, they're not growing at the same pace. There is disparities. Also, there is urbanization happening. So all these things leads to migration. People from one part of the country, they're moving to another part of the country. It is easy to move, and then there are disparities. People from the states of UP, Bihar, Odisha, they're moving to other places. In fact, some of the places, for example, Punjab, Haryana, they're using modern technology in agriculture. It also needs some labor, right? So migrants from different parts of the country, where you have a lot of young population, where you have more amount of poverty, are moving to some of these states, and these people are providing labor in agriculture sector as well. So the existing relations that existed, maybe in, let's say, some migrants are moving from UP, Bihar to a place in Punjab or Haryana. So the existing relations that existed in Bihar, in rural UP, that will get impacted. The caste relations will also get impacted. People are also moving to the cities. So in the rural areas, in the agrarian economy, whatever equation was there, that will also change. Politicization is also happening. In rural areas also politicization happens. In fact, Green Revolution, GR stands for Green Revolution here. This is something that we introduced in late 1960s. High yield variety seeds were introduced. Right? All these things will lead to increase in production, increase in productivity. That is how it was envisaged. And it led to that. Some of the places where Green Revolution was introduced, western part of UP, Punjab, Haryana, the agricultural productivity increased massively. Our dependence on other countries for our food, that went down. Right? So it was a technological marvel, but it also had an bearing on the social structures, especially agrarian social structures. Green revolution was not a scale neutral technology. It's not that it is benefiting everyone equally. Those who are from the upper classes, those who are from the upper caste, middle classes class to some extent, they are the ones who are more benefiting. Those who had small parcel of land, they will not be benefiting because of that. So green revolution is also leading to massive changes in the rural economy, agrarian economy. It also leads to politicization in the sense that those who are in agriculture, they now become a very important political force. You are seeing emergence of different leaders from the agrarian sector. Many farmer leaders emerged after this. Industrialization is also bringing about changes in the agrarian economy. How? People are moving to urban areas, they're working in industries now. So existing caste relations that were there, that is becoming weaker. Education is also bringing about change. So all these things are happening. On top of that, different kinds of policies, programs that are being initiated by the state, that also impacts the agrarian economy. Land reforms were initiated before independence. Again, zamindari system was there in large parts of the country. In some places you might have Rotwari system, in some places Mahalwari system. But the point is, a lot of people who were actually cultivating the land did not have ownership rights. Some intermediary class, the zamindars, they were the ones who were having the ownership rights. So land reforms were initiated to address these kind of issues. Those who are cultivating the land, they should have the ownership rights. So multiple kinds of land reforms were initiated. Multiple things were initiated as part of land reforms. Community development program, cooperatives, all these things were initiated so that the agrarian class structure changes. So over a period of time, the role of caste gradually declined in the agrarian economy. But does that mean the role of caste is zero? Is it nil in agrarian economy? That is not the case. Even now, most of the agricultural land in India is owned by the traditional cultivating castes. Some of those affluent sections, right? They still continue to own land. The poorer ones, they don't own it. And whatever be the situation, the relation between the traditional cultivating, the caste which traditionally owned and cultivated the land, the Jajmans, and the other castes, that has gradually changed. Caste norms, Jajmani system, all these things do not play a significant role now. Because now there are different things which are happening, right? The technology has reduced the role for these kind of reciprocal exchanges. Commercialization of economy has happened. People belonging to lower castes, they have now found out different avenues by which they can be better placed in the economy. Right? They're moving to urban areas. They're taking up new kind of jobs. Maybe they're moving and working in industries. Migration has provided all these things. So the traditional agrarian relations has broken down. But if you look at the ownership, now also the traditional land owning caste, cultivating caste, they are still owning the land. So this is how the situation looks like after independence. Some researchers, they have tried to classify, or they have tried to find out what are those classes which exist right now. On what basis you can classify the classes in agrarian economy, right? If you have to look at all those people who are engaged in the agrarian economy, on what basis you can find out who is which class? Who is the upper class over there, or middle class over there, or lower class over there? Or is it okay to call them upper class, middle class, lower class, or we should give them some different names? So some researchers have tried to do that. We'll just look at some of those ways of classifying. The traditional methods, upper class, lower class, middle class, might not be correct, or might not be the best way to classify people in the agrarian economy. So researchers like Daniel Thorner, what they have done is they have looked at certain parameters. And they're saying we can use these parameters to classify people who are in the agrarian economy at this point of time. So what are those parameters? Maybe in rural areas, land is there. So different people have different rights over the land. Some people own the land, some people cultivate the land, right? So on this basis, maybe we can think of classifying the people. Or what we can do is maybe we can think of what kind of income people have over land. Are they renting out the land and making profits? Are they cultivating on the land and as a result of which they're getting some income from that land? Or are they going and working on someone's land as a result of which they're getting some wages? So maybe we can look at how people are making income in rural areas, in agrarian areas. Also, what is the amount of field work they are doing? Are they not doing any field work? Or are they only doing field work? Or are they doing field work at some point of time and other points of time they are asking someone else to do the field work and they are giving them some wages? So on the basis of ownership right, on the basis of what kind of incomes they have, on the basis of what extent of field work they're doing, maybe we can do some classification. So Daniel Thorner has classified people in the agrarian areas on these basis and he has come up with threefold classification. So he says one group of people is Malik, another group of people is Kisan, another group of people is Majdoor. Who are the Malik? They are the ones who have property rights over the land. They are the ones who are owning the land. So because they own that land, they are making money out of it. Maybe they rent it out. Maybe they hire laborers who can work on their land. Kisan, they are the ones who own small plots. They do not have large plots. And mostly, they are the ones who are working on their own plots. But sometime, maybe during the harvest season, right, the more amount of work is required. They and their entire family, they're all pitching in, they're contributing with their labor, but it might not be enough because during harvest season, a lot of work is there. So at that point of time, maybe they will use someone else, right, apart from the family members. But mostly, it is they themselves and their family member. Who are the Majdoor? They do not own any land. They are working on someone's land. So those who are the landless, they are the Majdoor. Maliks are the one who own large amount of land, but they are not contributing their own labor. Kisan, they own small plots of land. They are using mostly their own family labor. So this is one way to classify. Another way to classify is on the basis of land ownership only, right? Those who have large parcels of land, big landlords, more than 100 acres. Big farmers, somewhere around 15 to 50 acres. Middle farmers, 5 acres to 10 to 15 acres. Small and marginal farmers, less than 5 acres, less than 1 acre. And then landless laborers who do not own any land. So maybe this is also another way to look at it. Also, these criteria that we are seeing, right, these numbers, that can also change, right? On the basis of that also, you can make the classification. So what we will do is we'll look at how these patterns look like in the present context. Some of the recent studies we'll look at. Right? How many people who are engaged in agriculture are landless? How many people who are engaged in agriculture, they own large amount of land? What kind of activity they're engaged in? Right? This is something which is interesting, right? When we are saying we're looking at the agrarian economy, we would assume that everyone is engaged in agriculture. But surprising fact is, some people might not necessarily be engaged in agriculture, or some people might be engaged in agriculture, but they will also be having something part-time. Parallelly, they're doing something. So we'll look at some of these things, and these are all from National Sample Survey, right? Some findings from NSSO data, and what we'll see is we'll look at NSSO data from the past and something which is recent, 2002, 2003, 2012, 2013, and we'll do a comparison. So how the agrarian social structure is also changing. How the agrarian class structure is also changing. How it looked like in 2002, 2003 and how it looks like in 2012, 2013. So from that also you get an idea, you understand the trend. Maybe some of these trends will be even more important in future. So let's see how much, on an average, how much land a household owns in rural areas, right? And how this has changed over a period of time. As per 2002-2003, average area owned by a household was somewhere around 0.725 hectares. In 2012-13, this has become 0.592. Total area owned was somewhere around 1,06,000, it has become 92,000. So overall area in agriculture has gone down. It is something which you can easily understand, right? Because we are moving towards the direction of urbanization. So area under agriculture, it is bound to decrease. Average area owned per household has gone down. Why this is happening? See, the average area is going down because of two things primarily. One is the overall area under agriculture has gone down. But if area under agriculture has gone down, the number of people engaged in agriculture could have also gone down. That way, average area would have remained the same, or maybe it would have increased, whatever. But what is also happening is the number of people engaged in agriculture, they're not moving out of agriculture. The population in agriculture might have increased. Why this is the case? Population increase is something which is natural, right? Population increases. And we have not seen that phase where our population is becoming lesser over a period of time. Then the other thing that could have happened, that should have ideally happened, is people moving out of agriculture to services and manufacturing. People, the next generation not continuing with agriculture. But that has not happened. Why this is not happening? Possibly we have not been able to create enough jobs for people to move out of agriculture to manufacturing and services. So the overall land that is there in agriculture has gone down. We have not been able to take out people from agriculture to manufacturing or services. The number of people engaged in agriculture remains huge. It has not declined significantly. As a result of which, per household, the amount of land that is available has decreased. Now, what is the concern? What is the issue? If the size of land available is less, the production might also be less, which implies all these households, their incomes will also be less, which implies they have to find out some other source of income, or else their standard of living will go down. Right? So this is one major area of concern. Now let's look at some other numbers. So here what we see is what proportion of households are having how much amount of land? Less than 0.002 hectares. Right? Between 0.002 hectares to 1 hectares. Between 1 hectare to 2 hectares. Right? So that way. Greater than 10,000 hectares. Between these two surveys, 2002, 2003, 2012, 2013, how have things changed? So one thing you can notice here is landlessness. Landlessness, according to this particular definition, is those who are having less than 0.002 hectares. This is something which has gone down from 10% to 7.4%. What about marginal holdings? It has gone up. Small, more or less same. Right? So again, all these numbers are quite low. This number is huge, right? Marginal land holdings. So if you just look at this point, look at this table, it seems good in the sense that landlessness has gone down. And landlessness is defined as owning less than 0.002 hectares of land. So those who are holding less than 0.002 hectares of land, their proportion in the total population has gone down. It's a good thing or not. Now, two things here. That if you consider landlessness as something which is less than 0.002 hectares, it has gone down, it's a good thing. But is it even viable to have 1 hectare of land? Is it economically viable? If you are having just 1 hectare of land, how much income will you have? Maybe not much. So if you just change the definition of landlessness to less than 1 hectare of land, then what will happen? This number is actually increasing. So the point is, how do you view landlessness? Is landlessness not having any land? Is landlessness having less than 0.02 hectares of land? Is landlessness having less than 1 hectare of land? I mean, at the end of the day, why are you doing all these kind of classification? To find out whether people in the agrarian economy, they are having the right source of income or not. What kind of economic situation they are in. Keep in mind, class is related to your wealth situation. Class is related to your income levels. It is related to your material well-being. less than 1 hectare of land is also not, will not lead to huge incomes. Your material well-being is not really changing. So the way you are defining things, right, that will again lead to different results. And forget about that. What is also a cause of concern is marginal landholders. Their proportion has increased 69% to 75%. So again, the number of people who are owning just 1 hectare of land, that has just increased. That has increased, right? That has increased by almost 5-6%. That is also a cause of concern. Right? So this is how it looks like in the rural areas. This is how you can divide people or classify people on the basis of how much amount of land they own. Now, this particular illustration is also interesting. Here, what is the amount of land people own and what kind of things that people do. People who are in the agrarian economy, you would expect them to participate in agricultural activities. You would expect them to cultivate the land. But interesting thing is, those who are owning very less amount of land, mostly they don't cultivate. Those who are owning less than 0.01 hectare of land, just 1.6% of them are actually cultivating their land. They're engaged in many other things, right? Some of them are working as laborers, they're getting some wages. So most of them are doing something else. Only those who are having comparatively large tracts of land, at least 1 hectare of land, they are the ones who are mostly engaged in cultivation. But keep in mind, they are also engaged in other things. Some of them are into livestock, some of them are into some other non-agricultural enterprises as well. And those who are having less than 1 hectare, they are also engaged in many other things, wages and other activities. So it shows that agriculture on its own might not be very remunerative. You have to do something else in parallel. Now, what kind of tenancy agreements people are into? What kind of contracts are there? Right? So many times what happens is people might not have their own land. They will be cultivating in someone else's land. So what kind of agreement they have? Most of these tenants, they give some rent, fixed money. For this year, I'll be paying this much amount of money. Next year, I'll be paying this much amount of money. I'll be cultivating the land. Whatever I cultivate, I'll make some money that will be completely mine. I'll give you something in return. But the second most thing is sharecropping. So people cultivate on someone else's land and they give a part of their produce to the owners of the land. So that's the second most thing. So this table gives you an idea what kind of tenancy contracts exist now. So this is how at the present, or at least some of the recent studies, what they have found out, how the agrarian social structure, agrarian class structure looks like. So this is about agrarian class structure. I just want to recap what was the major findings. Before the Britishers came, the agrarian social structure, you did not have class formations. It was at a very nascent stage, if it existed somewhere. It was mostly caste based. The agrarian economy dependent on castes, right? People had certain kinds of equations. The Jajmani system was there. Reciprocal exchange of goods and services used to be there. When Britishers are coming to India, they are now bringing in different kinds of changes, and they are impacting the agrarian economy as well, right? So they are coming up with permanent settlement, zamindari system is introduced, and it all leads to commodification of land. Land becomes a commodity now, and new classes are also emerging. One way to think of it is the state itself is becoming a landlord, and then the state is creating different kinds of appointed landlords. Another way to think of it is different kinds of classes have formed. One is the absentee landlords, the zamindars. Mostly they were not there in the rural areas, they will be in the urban areas. Then there will be sub-landlords who will be in the rural areas, and again there will be multiple sub-landlords. And then you have the people who are actually cultivating on the land who do not have any ownership rights, right? They are the peasants, they are the sharecroppers, they are the farmers, they cultivated the land. So this kind of class structure is emerging. Now, after India becomes independent, different kinds of policies the governments at different points of times are introducing. Technology is changing, economy is changing, transport communication facilities are becoming better, migration is happening, industrialization is there, urbanization is there. All these things leads to a situation where the caste relations that were there, they are gradually becoming weaker. And does that mean caste doesn't exist? It is only class in agrarian economy? That is also not true. Now also, who owns land? Most likely those who traditionally owned land, those who traditionally cultivated on land. They are the ones who still have a significant role over there. But caste regulations are not as strong in the agrarian economy as they used to be a couple of centuries before. So this is how agrarian social structure looks like.